Have you ever stopped to think about why you were born exactly in the year you were born? Why did your soul choose to enter this world at a specific time in history, in a specific country, in a specific family, in circumstances that were perhaps not the easiest or most comfortable? Most people never ask this question because they assume that birth is a random event, a cosmic lottery where some are lucky and others are not. But Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian visionary who dedicated his life to investigating the deepest mysteries of human existence, revealed a truth that completely transforms our understanding of destiny. There is no chance at the moment of birth. Each soul deliberately chooses the historical period in which it will incarnate, and this choice is closely linked to the specific developmental needs of that individual soul. And here is what may seem like a disturbing paradox. Many of the most advanced, most mature, most courageous souls deliberately choose to incarnate in difficult years, not despite the difficulties, but precisely because of them. This revelation from Steiner goes against everything our modern culture has taught us to believe. We have been conditioned to think that a good life is an easy life, that happiness means the absence of obstacles, that the purpose of existence is to maximize comfort and minimize suffering. From this perspective, being born in a difficult year would simply be bad luck, an unfortunate accident that we should regret and try to overcome as quickly as possible. But Steiner invites us to look at this question from a radically different perspective. He asks us to consider the possibility that the soul has a wisdom of its own, a wisdom that completely transcends the superficial criteria by which we normally judge what is good or bad for us. And this wisdom of the soul often chooses exactly what the ego would avoid at all costs. To understand why certain souls incarnate in difficult years, we must first understand Steiner's view of the fundamental purpose of earthly existence. In anthroposophical cosmology, the Earth is not just a planet where we happen to live. Earth is a cosmic school, an environment carefully designed to provide specific experiences that cannot be obtained anywhere else in the universe. Physical existence, with all its limitations, challenges, and suffering, offers unique opportunities for development that would be impossible on purely spiritual planes. In the spiritual world, everything is transparent, everything is immediate, there is no resistance. But it is precisely resistance that strengthens. It is precisely limitation that develops new capabilities. It is precisely the obstacle that awakens forces that would otherwise remain dormant. Steiner often used the muscle analogy to explain this principle. A muscle that never encounters resistance never develops. It remains weak and stunted, unable to perform the tasks for which it was designed. But a muscle that is regularly challenged, that needs to work against an opposing force, that muscle grows, strengthens, develops capabilities that it didn't have before. The same principle applies to the faculties of the soul. Compassion cannot fully develop in an environment where suffering does not exist. Courage cannot mature where there is no fear. Wisdom cannot flourish where there are no complex problems to be solved. The highest virtues of the human soul are forged precisely under conditions that our modern mentality considers undesirable. Now, when we apply this principle to the issue of difficult years, we begin to glimpse a deep logic behind what appears to be chaos or injustice. A difficult year, whether due to economic crises, wars, epidemics, social upheavals, or any other form of collective turmoil, offers a specific type of experience that calm years simply cannot provide. These are experiences of intensity, of urgency, of confrontation, with fundamental questions that in normal times remain dormant beneath the surface of everyday life. In difficult years, masks fall, illusions dissolve. People are forced to discover what they are really made of, to find inner resources they didn't know they had, to make choices that reveal their deepest values. Steiner taught that before each incarnation, the soul goes through a process of preparation in the spiritual world. This process involves a thorough review of previous lives, an assessment of lessons learned and lessons still outstanding, and careful elaboration of the plan for the next life. This plan is not imposed from outside by some heavenly authority. It is created by the soul itself in collaboration with higher spiritual beings who act as guides and advisors. And one of the most important decisions of this plantation is the choice of the historical moment of incarnation. The soul examines the different periods available and selects the one that offers the best conditions for the specific work it needs to do. And here we come to a crucial point. What the soul considers the best conditions often does not coincide with what the ego would consider. The ego seeks comfort, security, pleasure, recognition. The soul seeks growth, transformation, fulfillment of purpose, spiritual evolution. These two agendas can sometimes align, but they are often in tension. And when the soul looks back on a particularly turbulent historical period, it may see not a place to be avoided, but precisely the environment that offers the richest opportunities for the kind of development it needs. Steiner identified different categories of souls who choose to incarnate in difficult years, each with their own reasons and purposes. The first category includes what we could call pioneering or trailblazing souls. These are souls who have taken on the mission of helping humanity through periods of transition and crisis. They incarnate in difficult times, not for their own primary development, but to serve as points of light in the midst of darkness, as anchors of stability in the midst of chaos, as bearers of hope when hope seems impossible. These souls often become leaders, healers, artists, thinkers, who help their communities find meaning and direction in times of confusion. But to fulfill this mission, they need to be present exactly when and where the difficulties are greatest. The second category includes souls who are working on specific karmic issues that can only be adequately addressed under crisis conditions. Karma, in Steiner's view, is not a system of punishment and reward, but a mechanism of learning and balancing. When a soul has made certain mistakes in past lives, it carries with it imbalances that need to be corrected. And some of these fixes can only happen in extreme circumstances. For example, a soul who in previous lives abused power and caused suffering to many may choose to incarnate in a time of oppression, not as the oppressor this time, but as someone who experiences oppression from the other side. This experience provides a visceral, not just intellectual understanding of the suffering it previously caused, and this understanding is essential to true transformation of the soul. The third category includes young or relatively inexperienced souls who need intense experiences to accelerate their development. In calm times, the pace of learning may be slower, the lessons come gradually, diluted over many years or even many lives. But in times of crisis, learning is compressed, intensified, accelerated. A single life in a turbulent period can provide more growth than several lives in stable periods. It's like the difference between learning to swim in a calm pool and learning to swim in a rough sea. The second method is more difficult and risky, but it also develops skills that the first method simply cannot provide. The fourth category, and perhaps the most mysterious, includes souls who choose difficult years as a form of conscious sacrifice. These are souls that have already reached a high degree of development and who could, if they wanted, choose much more comfortable incarnations. But they choose to take on part of humanity's collective suffering as an act of love and service. Steiner taught that there is a spiritual economy where suffering consciously accepted and transformed can benefit not only the individual suffering, but the entire human community. These sacrificial souls function as collective karma transmuters, absorbing and transforming negative energies that would otherwise weigh even more heavily on humanity as a whole. But it is important to understand that the choice to incarnate in a difficult year does not mean that the soul is seeking suffering for suffering's sake. Steiner was very clear about this. Suffering in itself has no spiritual value. What has value is what we do with suffering, how we respond to it, how we transform it into wisdom, compassion, and strength. A person who simply suffers passively, who becomes bitter and resentful of their difficulties, is not fulfilling the purpose for which they chose those circumstances. The purpose is only fulfilled when suffering is faced consciously, when it is used as raw material for inner transformation. This brings us to one of the deeper questions raised by this perspective. How can we know if we are fulfilling the purpose for which we chose our life circumstances? How can we distinguish between simply surviving hardship and actually extracting from it? As the growth that our soul sought? Steiner offered some guidance in this regard. A sign that we are on the right path is when we begin to find meaning in our difficulties, not a meaning imposed from outside, but a meaning that emerges organically from our own reflection and experience. Another sign is when we realize that our difficulties are developing in us qualities that we did not possess before. Greater patience, greater compassion, greater resilience, greater wisdom. And perhaps the most important sign is when we begin to be able to help others facing similar difficulties, when our own suffering turns into the ability to alleviate the suffering of others. Steiner also talked about the phenomenon he called destination communities. These are groups of souls that choose to incarnate together in certain historical periods to carry out specific collective work. Not all members of a community of destiny physically know each other during their earthly lives, but all are connected by invisible threads of shared purpose. When we look at the great transformative movements in history, we can often see the actions of these communities of destiny. Groups of people who seem to emerge simultaneously in different places, working in complementary ways to bring about a change that none of them could achieve alone. Difficult years are often times when these destination communities are most active. Crises act as catalysts that activate purposes that would remain latent in normal times. People who, in ordinary circumstances, would live ordinary lives suddenly discover extraordinary vocations. Talents that had never been developed suddenly blossom. Connections that seemed unlikely form with surprising naturalness. It's as if the pressure of difficult circumstances created the conditions for something that had been waiting to emerge to finally find its moment. This perspective has profound implications for how we understand our own times. We live in a time that by many measures can be considered difficult. Environmental crises, political polarization, technological disruption, pandemics, wars, economic uncertainty. For many people, especially younger people, it may seem like they were born at a particularly inauspicious time in history. But if we apply Steiner's vision, a completely different interpretation becomes possible. What if the souls who are incarnating in this specific period chose to be here precisely because this is a crucial moment of transformation for humanity? What if the challenges we face are exactly the challenges our souls needed to develop the capabilities needed for the next phase of human evolution? This does not mean adopting an attitude of passive acceptance in the face of the world's problems. On the contrary, if we choose to incarnate at this moment to contribute to a transformation, then our responsibility is precisely to actively work towards this transformation. But we can do this from a completely different stance. Instead of feeling like victims of unfortunate circumstances, we can recognize ourselves as agents who chose to be here. Instead of wasting energy lamenting difficulties, we can channel that energy into facing them creatively and constructively. Instead of succumbing to despair at the magnitude of the problems, we can trust that our souls would not have brought us here if we did not possess the resources necessary to contribute in a meaningful way. Steiner talked about different qualities that tend to develop in souls that incarnate during difficult periods. One of these qualities is what he called presence of mind, the ability to remain centered and lucid even in the midst of chaos. In halcyon times, this quality may never be truly tested, but in times of crisis, it becomes absolutely essential, and it is precisely through facing crises that it develops. Another quality is flexibility or adaptability, the ability to quickly adjust plans and expectations when circumstances change unpredictably. Again, this is a quality that can only be developed through experiences that require constant adaptation. A third particularly important quality is what Steiner called moral courage. This is different from physical courage, which involves facing dangers to the body. Moral courage is the ability to maintain and express your values even when doing so is unpopular, dangerous, or costly. In halcyon times, moral courage may never really be required. But in times of crisis, when social pressures intensify and the consequences of going against the grain become more severe, moral courage is constantly needed. Stay, and through this test, strengthened. There is also an important collective dimension to this discussion. Steiner taught that humanity as a whole is undergoing a process of spiritual evolution that unfolds over vast periods of time. Different historical epochs correspond to different stages of this evolutionary process, and each stage has its own specific tasks and challenges. Periods of crisis often mark transitions between stages, times when old forms are dissolving to make way for new forms that are not yet fully manifest. These periods of transition are naturally turbulent because they involve the confrontation between what is dying and what is being born. Souls that incarnate during these transitional periods have a special role to play. They are, in a sense, midwives of the new world that is trying to be born. Your job is neither to preserve the old world nor simply to destroy it, but to facilitate the transition in the most conscious and compassionate way possible. This requires a rare combination of qualities: the ability to honor what is valuable in the past while remaining open to what is emerging, the ability to maintain hope without falling into illusions, the strength to face the inevitable resistance that all true change encounters. Steiner identified our current era as one of these particularly significant periods of transition. He saw the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century as a time of fundamental change in human consciousness, a passage from what he called the soul age of consciousness to even higher forms of spiritual development. The crises we experience, according to this view, are not accidents or aberrations, but necessary symptoms of a process of profound transformation that is taking place in the very structure of human consciousness. This puts the difficulties of our time in a completely different light. Rather than being evidence that something has gone terribly wrong, they can be seen as birth pangs of a new humanity that is struggling to be born. And the souls who have chosen to incarnate at this time are those who, due to their experiences in previous lives and their specific capabilities, are equipped to assist in this birth. Not because it is easy, but precisely because it is difficult, and because difficulty is the price of participating in something truly meaningful. But how can we, on a practical level, consciously work with this perspective? How can we turn the theoretical knowledge that our souls chose our circumstances into an active force in our lives? Steiner offered several practical suggestions. The first, and most fundamental, is to develop a regular practice of reflection or meditation. It is not necessarily about elaborate techniques or specific esoteric traditions. It's simply about creating regular moments of stillness in which we can disconnect from the noise of everyday life and get in touch with deeper dimensions of ourselves. It is in these moments of stillness that insights about our purpose and path can emerge. Steiner also recommended what he called the retrospective exercise. Every night, before going to sleep, review the day's events in reverse order, starting with the present moment and working backwards until the moment you wake up. This seemingly simple exercise has profound effects over time. It develops the ability to observe one's life from a higher perspective, to perceive patterns and meanings that go unnoticed in the hustle and bustle of everyday life. And gradually, this capacity for retrospective observation expands, allowing us to notice patterns not just in a single day, but across weeks, months, years, and eventually the entire trajectory of life. Another practice, recommended by Steiner, is to actively cultivate gratitude, even and especially in relation to difficulties. This does not mean pretending that difficulties are pleasant or denying the real suffering they cause. It means recognizing that if our souls have chosen these circumstances, there must be something in them that serves our development, even if we cannot clearly see what it is. This attitude of gratitude does not need to be forced or artificial. It can begin simply with a willingness to remain open to the possibility that there is value in hardship, even when that value is not immediately apparent. Steiner also emphasized the importance of developing a genuine interest in other human beings and the world. A soul that is fulfilling its purpose is not exclusively focused on itself. She is engaged with life around her, curious about the experiences of others, attentive to the needs of the community. This interest is not just a desirable moral quality, it is also a way of expanding consciousness beyond the narrow confines of the ego guise. And it is precisely this expansion that allows us to perceive connections and meanings that would otherwise remain hidden. There's also the question of how we relate to the collective difficulties of our time. Steiner warned against two equally problematic attitudes. The first is denial or avoidance, pretending that problems don't exist, or isolating oneself in bubbles of comfort that exclude the reality of the world's suffering. This attitude prevents us from fulfilling our purpose because it disconnects us from exactly the circumstances we came to face. The second problematic attitude is what we might call excessive absorption or identification, immersing ourselves so completely in difficulties that we lose all perspective and become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. This attitude also prevents the fulfillment of the purpose because it deprives us of the lucidity and strength necessary to contribute effectively. The healthy path, according to Steiner, is between these two extremes. It involves being fully present to the difficulties of the world, recognizing them, feeling them, engaging with them, but at the same time maintaining a connection with sources of strength, wisdom, and hope that transcend immediate circumstances. It is a stance of compassionate engagement combined with spiritual rootedness, and it is precisely this combination that allows it to be truly useful in times of crisis. One of Steiner's most provocative ideas on this topic concerns what he called predestined encounters. He taught that, before incarnating, the soul not only chooses the general historical period, but also makes agreements with other souls for specific encounters during the earthly life. These meetings can be with people who will help us in our development, people with whom we will help, people with whom we have pending karmic matters, or people with whom we will carry out specific work. In difficult years, these fated encounters often take on a special urgency. Crisis circumstances can create the exact conditions necessary for certain encounters to take place, encounters that in normal times might never occur. This suggests a different attitude towards people who come into our lives, especially in difficult times. Instead of seeing encounters as random or merely circumstantial, we can consider them as potentially significant, as possible fulfillments of agreements made before birth. This doesn't mean romanticizing every relationship or assigning cosmic meaning to every casual interaction. It simply means remaining open to the possibility that some of the people we encounter, especially in unusual or charged circumstances, may be significant presences on our soul journey. Steiner also spoke about the special role that certain souls assume as guardians of seeds of the future. In times of destruction and chaos, much of what humanity has built can be lost. Knowledge, traditions, values, visions. But certain souls incarnate specifically to preserve and transmit these seeds through the period of crisis, so that they can germinate again when conditions are right. These souls may not have visible or recognized roles. They may seem like ordinary people, living ordinary lives. But inside, they carry and protect something precious that will be necessary for the reconstruction that will come after the crisis. This idea has an interesting parallel with traditions from different cultures that speak of hidden guardians, people who keep the flame of wisdom alive in times of darkness. In Steiner's view, these guardians are not just mythical or metaphorical figures. They are real souls who take on this specific mission as part of their spiritual work for this incarnation. And in particularly difficult years, the number of these guardian souls tends to increase, as if the spiritual economy of the cosmos responded to the needs of the moment. We now come to a point that may be difficult for many people to accept: the issue of the suffering of the innocent. If souls choose their life circumstances, does that mean that children born in war zones have chosen this suffering? Which victims of natural disasters somehow consented to their fate? Steiner approached this question with great care and nuance. He recognized that there is a deep mystery here that cannot be completely solved by the human intellect. But it offered some perspectives that can help guide our reflection. First, he distinguished between different types of suffering. There is suffering that results directly from individual karmic choices, where the connection between cause and effect can be more clearly traced. But there is also the suffering that results from participating in the collective existence of humanity, where the soul accepts to share the destiny of a group, a nation, an island. Time without this implying a specific individual karmic responsibility. This second type of suffering is more difficult to understand, but Steiner suggested that it also has its purpose and value in the grand scheme of human evolution. Second, Steiner emphasized that the perspective of the soul is radically different from the perspective of the earthly ego. What appears unbearable and meaningless, viewed from within an individual life, may have a completely different meaning, viewed from the broader perspective of the soul's journey through multiple incarnations. This does not mean that earthly suffering is not real or does not matter. It means that there is a dimension of meaning that transcends what we can perceive from our ordinary consciousness. Third, and perhaps most important, Steiner insisted that recognizing the soul's choice does not imply any diminution of our responsibility to alleviate suffering where we can. The fact that a soul may have chosen certain circumstances does not mean that we should simply accept those circumstances as inevitable or stop working to change them. On the contrary, part of our own purpose may be precisely to act as agents of change, as relievers of suffering, as transformers of conditions. The spiritual view of the soul's choices does not contradict the ethical imperative of compassion and action. It complements and deepens it. Let us now return to the central question that animates this entire reflection. What does it mean to recognize that your soul may have chosen to incarnate in a difficult year? What practical difference can this make to how you live your life? The first and most fundamental difference is a change in identity. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of unfortunate circumstances, you can begin to see yourself as an active participant in a cosmic drama that you yourself helped write. This change of perspective does not eliminate difficulties, but it completely transforms the way you relate to them. The second difference is a change in the quality of attention. When you accept that your circumstances were chosen for a reason, you naturally begin to pay more attention to them, to seek out the teachings and opportunities they contain. Instead of simply trying to survive or escape difficulties, you begin to ask, what is this teaching me? What capabilities is this developing in me? What service is this preparing me to provide? These questions have no easy or immediate answers, for the very act of asking them opens channels of perception that would otherwise remain closed. The third difference is a change in the relationship with the future. When you recognize that you are here for a reason, the future stops being something that simply happens to you and becomes something that you are actively co-creating. This doesn't mean total control. It doesn't mean you can make anything you want happen. It means that there is a field of possibilities within which your choices and actions matter, within which you can more or less align with the purpose your soul has brought to this life. The fourth difference is a change in the experience of loneliness. Many people living through difficult years feel deeply isolated, as if they are facing their challenges completely alone. But when you consider Steiner's perspective, you realize that you are never truly alone. You are connected to a destiny community of other souls who chose to be here at the same time. You are in relationship with spiritual beings who helped plan your incarnation and who continue to follow your journey. And you are participating in a greater evolutionary purpose that gives meaning to even the most difficult and seemingly meaningless experiences. Finally, we arrive at a truth that can be simultaneously uncomfortable and deeply liberating. If your soul chose this difficult year, it means it believed you had the ability to face it. Not because you are superhuman or especially gifted, but simply because you are exactly who you are, with your specific strengths and your specific weaknesses, with your past life experiences and your unrealized potentials. Your soul did not bring you here to fail. She brought you here to grow, to contribute, to become more fully who you are capable of being. And the difficult years, as painful as they may be, are the soil in which that growth can happen. Rudolf Steiner dedicated his life to helping people awaken to these spiritual realities that underlie human existence. He knew that this awakening was not a philosophical luxury, but an urgent necessity for humanity entering a period of unprecedented trials. More than a century after his death, his words resonate with even greater relevance. We live in the difficult years he anticipated face. We see the challenges he predicted. And the message he left us remains as vital now as it was then. You are not here by accident. You are here by choice. And within that choice lies the key to finding meaning, purpose, and strength, even and especially when times are tough. The final question is not why you are here, although that is an important question. The final question is, now that you're here, what are you going to do? How will you honor the choice your soul made? How will you use the difficulties you encounter as raw material for transformation? How will you contribute to the greater work of human evolution that is happening through you and around you? These are questions that no one can answer for you. These are questions that you answer not with words, but with the totality of how you live your life. And it is in the answers you give, day after day, choice after choice, that the true meaning of having incarnated in a difficult year will finally reveal itself. There is an additional dimension to this teaching that deserves our careful attention, and it concerns what Steiner called the spirit of the age. Each historical period, in his view, has a distinctive spiritual quality, an invisible but real atmosphere that permeates all the experiences of those who live at the time. This quality is not determined only by external events, by wars or prosperity, by discoveries or catastrophes. It is shaped by deeper spiritual forces that work throughout human history, guiding the collective development of consciousness in ways that completely transcend ordinary understanding. When a soul chooses to incarnate in a difficult year, they are also choosing to expose themselves to a particular zeitgeist. And this exposure has consequences that go far beyond the immediate material circumstances. The spirit of the times shapes the way we think, feel, and perceive reality. It determines which questions seem important, which answers seem plausible, which aspirations seem possible. Being born in different times is, in a sense, being born in different worlds, even if the physical planet is the same. And souls choose their worlds based on what they need to learn and what they came to offer. Steiner spoke specifically about our current age as a time of great spiritual confrontation. Forces that have long operated behind the scenes of history are now increasingly coming to the surface, becoming visible to those with eyes to see. The materialism that has dominated the last few centuries is reaching a point of exhaustion, revealing its limitations and contradictions in ways that become impossible to ignore. At the same time, new spiritual impulses are seeking entry into human consciousness, offering possibilities for development that previous generations could not even imagine. It is a time of crisis in the original sense of the word, a moment of decision, a bifurcation, where radically different paths open up before humanity. Souls who choose to incarnate at this specific moment are, therefore, choosing to participate in this confrontation. Not as neutral spectators, but as active participants whose individual choices contribute to the collective outcome. This gives a special responsibility to all of us who are alive at this moment. We cannot simply worry about our personal well-being as if it can be separated from the fate of humanity as a whole. Our individual lives are intertwined with the much larger drama that is unfolding, and what we do or don't do has consequences that extend far beyond what we can realize. This perspective may seem too heavy, too big a responsibility to bear, and indeed it would be if we were alone. But part of Steiner's message is precisely that we are not alone. There are spiritual forces working for the healthy evolution of humanity, beings of wisdom and love who have accompanied and assisted human development for millennia. These beings cannot do our work for us, they cannot make our decisions or live our lives. But they can inspire, strengthen, guide those who open themselves to their influence. And one of the functions of difficult years is precisely to intensify this openness, to create the conditions in which spiritual help can be more effectively received. Steiner described how, in moments of personal or collective crisis, the veils between worlds become thinner. What is normally hidden from ordinary consciousness can become more accessible. Intuitions, synchronicities, significant encounters, sudden insights, all these phenomena tend to multiply in times of turbulence. It is as if external turmoil creates cracks in the solid surface of consensus reality, allowing glimpses of deeper dimensions to penetrate. SM. For those who are prepared to receive these experiences, they can be profoundly transformative. For those who are not prepared, they can be confusing or even disturbing. But in both cases, they represent opportunities for awakening that more stable times simply do not offer. This leads us to consider the specific role of suffering as a portal of transformation. Steiner was very clear that suffering in itself has no automatic spiritual value. One can suffer and remain completely unconscious, completely closed off, completely hardened. Suffering can embitter as much as it can mature. It can close as much as it can open. It can destroy as much as it can transform. The difference lies entirely in how suffering is faced, and what attitude the person brings to the experience. When suffering is faced with awareness, with a willingness to learn and grow, it becomes what the ancient alchemists called raw material, the raw substance from which spiritual gold can be refined. The difficulties of difficult years are, in this sense, raw material in abundance. They offer constant opportunities to practice patience, to develop compassion, to discover unknown inner resources, to transcend limitations that seemed insurmountable. Each difficulty consciously overcome leaves the soul stronger, more flexible, more capable of facing whatever comes next. But Steiner also warned about the dangers of a premature spiritualization of suffering. There's a tendency, especially in spiritual circles, to jump directly to lofty interpretations of difficulties without first fully honoring the reality of human suffering. Telling someone who is in the midst of a terrible crisis that their soul chose this experience can be not only unhelpful, but cruel if it is said in a way that minimizes or denies the legitimacy of their pain. Spiritual wisdom should not be used as a form of bypass, a way to avoid the emotional work necessary to process difficult experiences. It should complement this work, not replace it. The correct order, according to Steiner, is to first fully embrace the human experience in all its intensity, allow yourself to feel what needs to be felt, process what needs to be processed. Only then, from a place of greater stability and distance, can the broader dimensions of meaning begin to be explored. It's like grieving after a loss. Trying to find meaning too soon can be a way of avoiding the necessary pain of grief. But once grief has been adequately experienced, the search for meaning can be profoundly healing. Steiner also discussed a phenomenon he observed in souls who incarnate in particularly difficult years, a kind of mark or signature that they carry with them through subsequent lives. Having lived through a major crisis, having faced and survived extreme difficulties, leaves a lasting impression on the structure of the soul that remains even after the specific details of the experience are forgotten. This impression manifests as a particular form of strength, an ability to remain calm in storms, a resilience that seems inexplicable in light of current life circumstances. If you have ever met someone who possesses this mysterious quality of unshakable solidity, this person may very well be a soul who, in past lives, has gone through great trials. The difficulties she faced long ago continue to pay dividends in the present, not as conscious memories, but as embodied capabilities that are simply part of who she is. And, in the same way, the difficulties you face now, in your difficult year, are developing capabilities that you will carry with you into future lives. Capabilities that will become resources, not just for you, but for all those your future life will touch. This long-term perspective is essential for maintaining hope and purpose in the midst of immediate difficulties. When we look only at the present moment, crises can seem absolutely devastating, ends of the world from which there is no recovery. But when we broaden the focus to include the perspective of the soul that spans multiple lifetimes, we see that even the greatest catastrophes are moments in a much longer journey. They leave their marks, yes, but these marks can be transformed into wisdom, compassion, strength. Nothing is wasted in the economy of the soul. Everything is material for growth. Steiner often spoke about the crucial role that memory plays in this process of spiritual transformation. Not ordinary memory that remembers facts and events, but a deeper form of memory that he called cosmic memory or spiritual memory. This memory is not accessible to ordinary consciousness, but it is present in deeper layers of being, influencing our intuitions, our affinities, our inexplicable reactions to certain situations or people. Working to develop conscious access to this deeper memory was, for Steiner, one of the fundamental spiritual tasks of our time. Difficult years offer special opportunities for this memory work. The intensities of the crisis can shake the habitual structures of consciousness in ways that allow normally hidden contents to come to the surface. Dreams become more vivid and meaningful. Déjà vu and other anomalous experiences become more frequent. Encounters with certain people evoke inexplicable feelings of recognition or familiarity. All of these experiences are potential windows into the soul's deepest memory, opportunities to retrieve fragments of wisdom accumulated over many lifetimes. There is also the question of what we might call future memory, a paradoxical notion that Steiner explored in some of his more advanced lectures. He suggested that the soul, before incarnating, not only reviews the past, but also envisions future possibilities. It sees, in a general and non-deterministic way, the contours of what might happen if certain choices are made, if certain developments occur. And these glimpses leave their own impressions, which can manifest themselves during earthly life as presentiments, seemingly inexplicable aspirations, or a sense of destiny not yet fulfilled. When a soul chooses a difficult year, it may be responding not only to needs of the past, but also to possibilities of the future. She may be positioning herself to contribute to something that does not yet exist, but is in the process of becoming. The difficult years are often the years in which the new is trying to be born, and the souls who choose these years may be exactly those who carry the seeds of that new within themselves. Your job is not just to survive difficulties, but to allow something truly new to emerge through them. This puts the challenges of our time in a different perspective. We are not just trying to solve problems or overcome crises. We are participating in a process of creation that is bringing something new into existence. Old forms are dissolving not only to reveal emptiness, but to create space for forms we do not yet know. And we Souls who choose to be here at this moment are at the same time witnesses and participants in this creation. Our pains are birth pains. Our confusions are the inevitable confusions of those who are in unknown territory. Our struggles are the struggles of pioneers paving the way for those who come after. Steiner spoke often about the courage it takes to live in times of transition. It is not the courage of the hero who faces a clear and defined enemy. It is a subtler form of courage, the courage to remain open when everything invites closure, the courage to maintain hope when all evidence seems to contradict it, the courage to continue searching for meaning when the absurd seems to triumph. This form of courage is perhaps the most difficult of all because it does not offer the satisfaction of a battle clearly won. It requires a quiet persistence, a fidelity to one's deepest values, even when that fidelity seems to make no difference. For those reading these words and recognizing in themselves the experience of living through a difficult year, Steiner would probably offer this advice. Don't waste the difficulty. Don't avoid it. Don't deny it. Don't romanticize it. But don't waste it either. She was chosen for a reason. It contains seeds that could not germinate in any other soil. Your task is not to fully understand why you are here, but to fully live the fact that you are. And living fully means engaging with the circumstances you encounter, extracting from them all possible learning and growth, and trusting that your presence here and now makes a difference, even if you can't see how. The difficult year is not your enemy. He is your master, your partner, your collaborator in the great work of soul development. And when you finally look back, whether at the end of this life or from an even broader perspective between lives, you will see that the difficulties that seemed so devastating were actually gifts in disguise, precious opportunities that you almost certainly would not have consciously chosen, but that your soul knew were exactly what you needed. This is the paradox at the heart of Steiner's teaching about difficult years. That which the ego rejects is often that which the soul most longs for. And wisdom lies in learning to trust the soul, even when that trust challenges everything we thought we knew about what is good for us.